these are just a few basics of Photoshop. If you don't know Photoshop very well, let me give you just a quick rundown of some tools that you need to know and the palettes. So first of all, if I come up here to File and New, that allows me to open up a new document. Depending on what you're doing, you might be opening a document or opening a picture to edit. But if you want a document, you go to New, File and New, and you give it a name. So this can just be my example. And you choose, there are some presets settings for size. If I do paper, which is a common one, 8.5 by 11, 300 pixels per inch. So that's a good one. There's also web, which is a really small document, 800 by 600 pixels. So depending on what you're doing, I'm going to choose paper and click OK. And it brings up my document here. If I hold down Alt and mouse wheel, then it scrolls in and out, or it zooms in and out. So that's Alt, mouse wheel, scroll. Okay, we've got our tools over here, which there's a lot of tools. We'll mainly use maybe brush, selection tools to select certain things, and the paint bucket. If you click and hold on some of these, the ones with the little arrows, it gives you more options. I'm clicking and holding. And so the paint bucket, the type tool definitely, and there's tons of others, but we won't go over all of them. Now, we also have our colors down here. If I click once on the color, it brings up the color palette, and I can click and drag and grab any color that I want. And so I'll show you that as well in a minute, a little more detail. Okay, I've got a document here. It's in this tab right here. If I opened up a new document, went to File and New, and this time chose, let's see if I typed example 2 and chose a web document, 800 by 600 pixels, clicked OK. Now I've got two open, and they're right here in the tabs. Okay, so if I've got two things open, if I open up a picture to bring it in, it's going to open up a new tab like this, and I just switch between the tabs, whichever one I want or am working on at the time. So I'm going to stay on my first one. Now the palettes over here are really important. Palettes are toolbars. I always have layers open. Layers is probably the most important one because we always use layers, and then I always have history open. History is when I do certain things. If I paint, if I pick a color, click on that, and I pick any color that I want by clicking and dragging. And I use my brush to paint. And if I can come up here and make my brush bigger. Oh, that didn't make it any bigger. Right here, size. Make my brush bigger and paint different things. If I click lots of times, it's remembering all those clicks. And so right here in my history, I can go back and say, I want to get rid of all that. I'm going to go back to the new. Or I want to get rid of half of what I just did or more. I just click where I want to go. So that's the history palette. Now the palettes, if you don't have that history palette or you can't find it, come up to Window, and they are all right here. And all I have is really my layers and my history open. And there's others in the tabs, and so I can click on some of these tabs, and there are other ones that I have. And also there are some along the side right here. So I can click those or click the arrows to put them back where they go, my brushes. So there's different ones. I can also move them around. If I want this history one, I can click right here on that little bar and move it over here, right there. So then I click it, it opens it up right here. I like to always have it because I am always editing it, so I always put it down here at the bottom underneath the layers. So I've got layers and history. Okay, but if you can't find it, go up to Windows and you just click on it. That gets rid of it. And I click on it again, it puts it back. Okay. So that's history. Now layers. Layers is a big part of Photoshop, and that's kind of the main thing that I wanted to show here. So I've got my background layer, and I can't delete anything on that background layer. If I ever want to delete anything on it, make it transparent, then I would have to double click on it and select, give it a name, or just have it layer 0, and then I can delete stuff out of it. So if I grabbed my marquee tool, selected that much, and just delete on the keyboard, it deletes it and it shows this checkerboard, which means it's transparent. There's nothing there. So just as an example, you wouldn't be able to do that if it was just the background layer. Okay, so I'm going to come up here, start again. Alright, if I open up an image, go to File and Open, let's see what images I have here. I got a few here. Let me pick this basketball. And it opens up in a new tab. So I've got 3 tabs now, and I've got this basketball. Now, the selection tool, if I click and hold, there's two that are really good. Quick selection tool, magic wand tool, and we'll use a lot of this. If I have a solid color in the background of this ball, I want to get rid of it, I'm going to use the magic wand tool because I just click once and it selects every pixel that is that color. And if it's all white, then that's easy. If it's gradient, that's really difficult, and we'll have to use the other selection tool or something else. But if I select it all, it's selected everything around the ball. I hit delete on the keyboard. Oops, cancel. It's the background layer, like I just mentioned. So if I double click on that and switch it to layer 0, then I can delete it, and it goes transparent. That way, and I've still got my little dancing lines, and so I'm going to have to deselect, Control D, or come up here to select, and right here, deselect, Control D. Now if I get my move tool right here, up here at the top of the toolbar, move, I can grab the ball, and I can drag it up to my first example document, and I'm still dragging, I'm clicking on the mouse. I haven't let go yet, so I bring it back down, and then I can let go, and there's my ball. Now it also, when I bring something into my document, it makes a new layer. Okay, so I've got my background layer, and I've got layer 1, which is the ball with a transparent background, so I can stick that anywhere I want. Okay, if I'm clicked on background and I try and move that, it's not going to move. And in fact, it's going to give me an error, say your background layer is locked and you can't move it. So you always need to be paying attention to what layer you are on. If I brought in another image, file open, and let's grab this clock, and if I did the same thing, deleted the background, oops, change the background to layer 0, and then I can delete it, Control D to deselect, get my move tool. Now this is just an example, you don't have to do all this, I just want to show you the layers. Bring it back in. Okay, that's really small. That is another thing that I need to show. If it's small or too big and I want to resize it, I do a Control T, and that is free transform. If I go to image, let's see if I even know where it is. Layer, yeah, I don't even know where it is. Edit, there it is. Under edit, free transform. I always do Control T. I like the shortcuts, but there it is. Free transform or Control T, and it gives me this bounding box, and I can click on one of the corners or the edges and it resizes it. Now I don't want a clock that's lopsided like this, so whenever I resize an image or almost anything, I hold down Shift after I click and it constrains it to a perfect circle. And it looks pretty bad, but when I check the OK, like yes, I want to change it to that size, then it will look a little bit better. Okay, so there's my clock, my ball. Now I've got 2 layers or 3 layers, background layer and 2 others. And so if I'm trying to move my ball, I click on it, but it's only moving the mouse because that's the layer that I have selected. Now if I want to decide, if I'm trying to decide whether I should have the clock or the ball right there, get my free transform, make that a little bit bigger just for kicks. If I'm trying to decide what I want there, they're both round, they both look good for whatever reason. I use this a lot, these little eyeballs in the layers. Now I can click the eyeball right here, it hides that, just like in other programs they've got the eyeballs. I can hide that layer, and I'm only looking at these 2 layers now. Or I can hide both of them and see just the background, or put both of them back. I can also put the clock below the basketball by just clicking and dragging, and so I can change the order of the layers as well. So all of this is very useful, and I use the layers constantly. And if you're not using layers in Photoshop, then you're not using it how it's supposed to be used, and you're not taking advantage of its full potential. So those are the very basics. There's a million things that we could learn and I could show you, but I think that might be good for now. Maybe I'll show you the colors real quick. Also on layers, I can change the opacity. And so I can either click on the word opacity and drag left or right, or I can click here and it gives me a little slider. I can change the opacity. See, now it's very halfway opaque. And if I put the ball back up, or if I put the ball underneath the clock, I can see the ball through the clock because its opacity is down by 46%, or to 46%. I can bring it back up to 100%. Okay, so we can play with the opacity there as well. Colors. If I wanted to get the brush tool, or let's do the paint bucket. Paint bucket tool, I have purple, and right there I'm on layer 2, and so it changed the background color of that layer. Now if I move it, See, it's got the color around the clock. That's not what I wanted. So I'm going to come down to my history palette and click to where I messed that up. And if I went to then background and my paint bucket tool, just click and it changes the color on the background. Then I can click on my layer 2 and the move tool and move it around. So you got to be careful of your layers. You got to know what layer you're on and what you're messing with, because you can really mess things up. And but as long as you know your history palette and you know your layers, you should be fine. Alright, if I wanted to change colors, I click on it again as I've showed this, and I just choose any color that I want. Let's get a green. I can get a dark green here. Then click OK. And get my paint buckets, make sure I'm on the background layer, and change that color. So that's a brief overview of Photoshop. You should be able to do the assignment with that knowledge. You know what, there's one more thing that I want to show you, which is the type tool. And that's an important one. So click type tool, click out here, it gives you a little cursor, and I can type whatever I want. I'm going to type clock ball. That's what I've got on my image. Now it's not showing, so I need to change the color of the text. The text happens to be the same color as the background, so if I click and drag what I just typed, I'm going to click on my color right up here on this tools panel, and I'm going to change that to black. So I'm just going to click and drag down to the corner, and then it's black. Now it's kind of off the page, and so I click my move tool and I can move that around. Clock ball. Now it's got its own layer, text layer, and I can do a lot of cool things with that text. If I come here to FX, I can choose any one of these, and I can, depending on which, if you know what you want to do, click that one. If not, just click the first one, bevel and emboss, and then you can either uncheck that, check something else, or use that one and change the settings of it. So this one's kind of bevel and emboss. It gives it a shadow, makes it look a little 3D. I can put a stroke on it and change the size. If I click on stroke, and that makes a big color around it, I can change that color to whatever I wanted. Oh, that's going to look beautiful. It's terrible. But I can put all of these effects on my text, and that's going to be useful for lots of different projects and assignments. Okay, then it shows up right here. These are my effects. I can turn them off. Like if I wanted to see without the effects, I click the eyeball. I'll see it without the bevel and emboss. Okay, so lots of options for that text. With the layers as well, I can grab a new layer. If I just want a new blank layer, and there it is. I can put it up at the top if I want to put something on it, or I could duplicate a layer. If I've got this text right here and I want to make another text and put it somewhere else that says clock ball with all the effects, I just click on that layer and drag it down to the new layer button, and it makes a copy of it. Now they're right on top of each other, so you can't tell, but if I'm clicked on one of them and I've got my move tool, I just click and drag it down somewhere else. So I can copy, I can make a new one, I can drag one to the trash if I don't want it, like that new one. I'm going to say, oh, I don't need that anymore. I'm going to drag it down to the trash, and it's gone. Lots of other stuff, but I think that's good for now. Those are the basics. Good luck.